And on that note, I'd like to welcome you to our workshop about digital communities and how we can build them better together. My name is Kim, and I'm the Learning and Community Manager at Ed3 DAO. My background is actually in strategic branding and visual communication. I'm currently writing my master's thesis on today's topic, and I hope to continue on this research in this area with my PhD as well. I'm particularly interested in how communication in all its forms influences personal identity formation. In other words, how the things we consume and interact with on a day-to-day basis influence the way we see ourselves, and in turn, influences our behavior in society. So my hope for today is that you walk away with a newfound curiosity and respect for digital communities and how each of us as individuals can co-create our collective identity to foster new equitable opportunities and spark that innovation that we were talking about. So today we're going to look at what community means. We had some really great definitions in the chat. We're going to explore co-creation of collective identity, the pros and the cons of co-creation, ideas for overcoming some of those challenges, and then we'll recap and end with a Q&A. So feel free to jot down all your questions so we can go through them at the end. So I want to lay down a solid foundation for us to build upon. The word community is polysemic, so it has many related meanings. And so when we think about digital communities, we often think about these two definitions, and these are from the Oxford Dictionary. One is a group of people who share the same interests, pursuits, or occupation. Definition two is an online facility such as electronic bulletin board, forum, chat room, social media platform, where users can share information or discuss topics of mutual interest. And there's nothing really groundbreaking or new for anyone here with those definitions. Now, I think perhaps maybe some people attended this event or avoided this event based on their understanding of what digital community means. And both of these definitions are still relevant, but I feel as though they're unimportant, right? As though the experience of digital community here is reserved for leisurely pursuits, right? Those things on the side, the things that you have time for. I think we need to unpack it a bit further, and we'll uncover a deeper meaning. So to set us on the right course, I'd like to suggest a third definition, also from the Oxford Dictionary, which is a body of people who live in the same place, usually sharing a common cultural or ethnic identity. I get it. At first glance, it doesn't seem to fit at all. In fact, one of the benefits of digital communities is that they're not bound by geographic location. But what I'd like to suggest is that this definition, this third one, feels close to home, right? So anything happening close to home will have a major impact on your life. Now, I want you to imagine being woken up by loud construction noises at 6 a.m. How does that make you feel? Or waking up to freshly baked bread in the morning. How does that make you feel, right? So these things that we may not invite, like the sound of construction noises, but they're close to home, have the power to set the tone for the rest of your day. And that's because at home, that's where we feel most safe. Right? That's where we let our guard down and we're our most vulnerable. And so I like this idea, and I want us to keep that in the back of our minds, this idea of being close to home. And though the specific definition, if I go back, a body of people living in the same place or sharing a common cultural ethnic identity may not be applicable, what I like is that sense of being close to home. So we'll keep that in mind as we move on through. So we'll take a look at the concepts of individual identity, collective identity, and co-creation. And I want to start by sharing this really cool example, real life example. So Vriti, our CEO, she attended ISTE Live June this year, and she witnessed some of our Ed3 members engaging in what we call co-creation in real time and completely unbeknownst to us. So Stormy from Texas and Wendy from Florida, they took it upon themselves to print and distribute Ed3 DAO collateral to help spread the word about our mission and the work that we're doing. They didn't ask us for permission. They didn't get any approval for the collateral. They just took it upon themselves to do this. Another member, Amanda, at the same conference, Riti ran into her and she was wearing the Ed3 DAO t-shirt. And she took it upon herself to put, if you see there on the right, educator cultivator at Ed3 DAO on her lanyard. And what's powerful about this is that we're seeing members taking ownership of the Ed3 DAO mission and manifesting it in their own way, right? And that's when I read a lot of these things, like we come back to yours, James. Problem solving, identifying who else should be part of the community. Like, are you waiting for someone to say, "Hey, James, can you go and identify some members for us?" Or do you feel like it's something that means so much to you that you take ownership of that and you start to do it, right? And then a lot of the things that are how do we take into account the interest of all? How do we take into account the well-being of all? Well, that's everyone's responsibility, right? So the strength and the quality of the community actually comes from the strength and the quality of its members. So I believe this is a result of human-centric community building. And this is where if we take care of the individual's needs, the collective's needs will be taken care of. In other words, we want to put people before profit. But this requires providing individuals with a sense of purpose, support, guidance in the things that matter to them, opportunities to learn and grow, and empowerment to contribute and influence, the areas that matter so they can make a difference. But they need to be much more than just pretty words, on a website or on my slide deck. Right? Our actions and our activities, they must be in pursuit of this kind of human-centric community building. So walking the walk rather than just talking the talk. So what we saw happen at ISTE is the co-creation of identity. Both the identity of the individual and the identity of the brand or the collective, Ed3 DAO in this case, are being co-created here. So here's a simple diagram that will hopefully help illustrate this concept. In the middle, we have the co-creation, and to the left, we have the extended self that represents us, the individual, and to the right, we have Ed3 DAO, the collective. The individual and the collective have this symbiotic relationship, and they're constantly in collaboration with one another. So the concept of the extended self, Belk wrote in 1988, suggests that our sense of identity extends beyond our physical bodies to include our positions and our relationships. And then he expanded on this concept in 2013 by exploring the extended self in the digital world. So in essence, our online interactions, the content we share, and the communities we're a part of have become our digital possessions. And they're as much a part of our identity as our race, gender, hair color, or the car we drive. Then, inspired by Belk's work, Schembri and Latimer noted that brands can collectively generate brand culture through the construction of self, emotional relationships, storytelling, and ritualistic practices. So as individuals engage with your digital community or our digital community or a digital community, they have the opportunity to develop their own sense of self, right? Establish emotional relationships with other members by sharing stories and rituals. And then they begin to co-create the community's culture. They begin to co-create the identity. And ultimately, they're contributing to the growth of the collective. So simultaneously, as the collective evolves and continues to prioritize the growth and empowerment of the individual, it starts to become a part of that individual's extended self. And it just keeps looping back around. So again, that you want the collective to be strong, you make your members strong. So to help visualize this concept of co-creation, I've developed a simulation with the wonders of ChatGPT that shows the interaction between individuals and the collective. So let me just open this up. Can you guys see this white screen? Okay. Yep. Excellent. So it's quite simple. The large circle in the middle represents the collective, or the community. The small circle represents an individual member who contributes to the collective. Now, as that individual engages, the collective identity begins to take on the identity of that individual, represented by the color transfer there. So right now we only have one member, so we'll add a few more. And just like in real communities, each individual brings their unique perspectives and experiences represented here by different colors. Just like in reality, people will contribute different amounts at different times. So this is all randomized. You know, some people might contribute more than others. What's interesting about the simulation, though, is how the collective identity also influences each individual's identity. Right? So over time, that color in the middle, whatever it ends up being, will start to drip into each of those individuals' identities. This is that symbiotic relationship that we were talking about. So what we're going to do, we'll add a few more people. We'll hide that and we'll come back to it later and we'll see what it looks like. So the more an individual engages, the more potential influence the collective has over their individual identity. And this matters a lot. Okay. I want to think back 20, 30 years ago when you got home from school, all the drama was on pause until the next day at school. Unless you physically met up with your friends or someone called you on the landline, you got a break from it all. If you went to karate, your parents would take you once or twice a week, maybe twice. You know, if you're at a book club, you went to the library or you went to a friend's house, you had to physically be somewhere to engage in community activities. So we had this time to miss our friends. There was a reprieve from social expectations. Now, that school drama persists regardless of location. If you were getting bullied in the playground, you might be getting bullied on the bus. You get home, you look on social media, you've got chat messages from kids, like it persists. If Josh and Sarah broke up, you're texting the group chat at 10 p.m. It's a school night. God forbid I was up at 10 p.m. on a school night. My parents would not allow that. But kids are just there chatting away. There is no reprieve from that. Your book club, your karate dojo, there's a private Facebook group, a WhatsApp group. You're just constantly in connection with these digital communities. You get to submerge yourself in these things. So if we come back to the definitions, those same interests, pursuits, and occupations on those same online facilities, bulletin boards, chat rooms, forums, are now much closer to home, right? They're persistent. Those relationships, those influences are constantly in your face, for better or for worse. This isn't about demonizing it. It's just about highlighting the reality of it. We need to understand and respect that these influences are constantly there. But this is why co-creation is so important and so powerful. Because if we're well informed and we learn to appreciate this impact that our digital citizenship has on our identities, we can be intentional about how do we leverage this for good. So as you can imagine, there's incredible benefits that come with human-centric community building, but there's also challenges, right? So some of those benefits are increased engagement, loyalty, enhanced innovation, creativity, organic, genuine brand advocacy, better alignment with community values, rapid adaptation to market changes, crowdsourced problem solving. Some of the challenges are balancing diverse inputs from different members, different perspectives, right? You saw the different colors in the simulation. As a branding guy, the risk of brand identity becoming fragmented if people are expressing their brand. So as beautiful as the ISTE example is, when I heard that, I was like, oh, like, did they use the logo right? What color did they use? Like, because as wonderful as it is, what if, an important company who has a funding grant saw it and goes, oh, they're not very professional, are they? Like, that there's the risk. How do we ensure a cohesive strategy? How do we deal with conflict and disagreements? IP. How do we protect intellectual property? And how do we address ethical implications? Like, it's complex. There's no way that one workshop can solve all of this. And that's why I'm trying to sort of help communicate the importance of why we should maybe stop and consider how we behave and how we utilize these digital communities. So whether it's a family chat, chess club, school group, work forum, we are all already deeply involved within digital communities. So let's look at some ways that we can overcome these potential challenges so we can build these better digital communities. So first and foremost, be human-centric, put people first. And I truly believe that if we care about the individual's needs, the collective's needs will follow. Establishing clear guidelines and values, set those expectations early. I believe a lot of challenges can be avoided by ensuring that we attract the right people to the community in the first place, attract and keep the right people. We want to strengthen communication channels. Clear communication is such a powerful thing. Ensuring that, one, your members know how to communicate ideas and concerns amongst themselves, but also that we're communicating with them and keep them up to date with the latest systems and processes and news. Implementing inclusive decision-making processes, using robust moderation and conflict resolution. There's so many different governance models, sociocracy, holacracy, there's the DAO model, there's plenty more than that. Most likely it's going to be, I think, honestly, for every company, organization, it will be their own sort of hybrid that they're going to create, because not every model is perfect for every situation. And especially if we're putting people first, we shouldn't be bound to the model. We should be bound to the duty that we have to our members. Leveraging technology, of course, that's what we're about at Ed3 DAO. How do we use technology to eliminate bias, to automate things? Providing education and training, teaching your community members how to be great community members. If any of you here have been managers, leaders in the workplace, or you've had a manager that said, like, you're not doing well in this, or why don't you do this? But you've never been told how to be a great employee, how to be a great member. Like, we owe it to them. If we want a certain standard, let's train them how to reach that standard. If it's appropriate, encourage and reward contributions. How do we encourage positive behavior? Foster a sense of community and belonging, making people feel welcome, connecting others, building those meaningful relationships, consistently monitoring and evaluating impact. This isn't a set and forget thing. We might have it one way. Let's test it for a few weeks, for a month. Let's reconvene, reassess. Can this be improved? What's working? What's not working? Seeking legal counsel when it's appropriate for things like IP issues, right? If Mary was to contribute something to the community and that idea was then turned into a product or a service or an event, who owns the IP, right? It's being upfront and clear about these things and not just assuming and brushing them off to the side. So we seek counsel when that's appropriate. Last but not least, experiment. We're going to make mistakes and it's okay. Like, this is unexplored territory. We need to be brave and not be afraid to try new things and learn from those things. So to recap, we looked at what community means in a digital context, and we found that digital communities are closer to home than we may realize, especially with that persistent influence. We explored the meaning of co-creation, collective identity. We looked at the extended self in digital communities and that symbiotic relationship between the individual and the collective. We also looked at the pros and cons of co-creation and how we can overcome some of these challenges by being intentional, evaluating our impact and not being afraid to try new things. Now, before we jump into Q&A, I want us to take a little look at how our little community is going. So that's been going for quite a while now. So you can see that all of those different colors have been taken from that community and adopting that community's culture, identity, right? Now, this is a oversimplified simulation because reality is a lot more nuanced than this, right? We've got 10 of these that we're a part of and we're interacting with them at different times, but we're taking a piece from here and then dropping that piece over here. Maybe this group over here influences the way you talk, so you bring that way of talking over to this group over here. And this is a beautiful opportunity, I think, but there's also a risk. And I think if those of you who have worked in the classroom, you would see the influence that the communities that students are a part of can have on their lives, on their day-to-day lives. You might see a student at the start of the year who's a great student, great behavior, and then come midway through the year, they've just turned absolutely rotten because of people that they're hanging around with. And my parents will always just say that, I don't want you hanging out with Ricky anymore. I don't trust Ricky. It's all right, Ricky was okay. Let me head back here. One last thing before we get into Q&A. I want you to just your own homework in your own time. You don't need to share it anywhere. This is completely private for you. But to help sort of get the gears turning, there's 3 questions I want you to consider. The first is, what digital communities are you a dedicated member of? Right? Not that Facebook group that you follow and you know, it's just like a slide. Those ones that you are dedicated of. You love to check in every day. You love to contribute. You get value from that as well. How many of those are there? And these can be formal communities. They could be like an online course, the Ed3 DAO community, a business group. They could be informal. It could be a group chat with friends about cooking or hunting, or family group chat. Because those small ones are still considered your digital communities, and they still have persistent influence on our lives. So, example, I have a group chat with 2 mates, and they live nearby, and we go hunting together, and we're all homesteaders as well. Right, so we talk about our animals, we talk about our gardens, all that sort of thing. When we're not together, we're sending each other memes on Instagram about hunting, about homesteading, or we're scheduling the next hunt, or we're sharing ideas and links, or hey, can you guys help me with this? Do you have any ideas? So it's like I live with these guys because I'm almost talking with them 24/7. And you can guarantee that my identity is influenced by that small group chat. Right, the culture that we're building amongst us, the way I talk, the things that I'm interested in, it matters. So don't discard those small digital communities that are in your life. It's very easy for us to just think about Facebook group that I'm a part of, Ed3 DAO. But when we think about digital community holistically, you'll realize there's a lot of these smaller pockets that we need to consider. The second question is, how is your individual identity influenced by these communities? And this isn't a bad thing. All right. Identity formation is something we do our entire lives. So consider the way you dress, speak, your religious or political views, mannerisms. What things from these communities have an impact on your life? And this is just about understanding and highlighting how this works. And once you can see it, you start to appreciate, if you are building your own community, okay, how are we impacting our members' lives by them being a part of this community? Are we impacting them for good, or are we impacting them negatively? And the last question is, how do you influence the identity of the collective? Maybe you have no way to influence the collective in a typical sort of centralized corporate brand. It's the corporate up here. They tell you this is the way it's going to be. You really have no say. But if you are able to have some influence, how did you get that influence? Are you club president? Are you an executive at the company? Or is it a decentralized model where everyone gets a say? Are you able to identify cultural, systematic, or visual behaviors that you helped influence? Like you see the logo and you're like, yep, I was part of that. Or we have a weekly ritual when we jump on our video calls. And I remember when we first did that. Right? Can you see your influence in the community there? So I encourage you to spend some time to think about digital communities in this way, particularly that symbiotic relationship, influential relationship. Because the goal here is to begin to understand how deeply connected we all are, and more importantly, how much these connections influence our own identities. And the same goes for your students, your colleagues, your friends, your family. Because I believe that if we understand the importance of digital communities, we can start working more efficiently, more effectively to have a positive impact in our world. So that's enough of me flapping my gums. I'd like to open up for Q&A. Any questions that any of you might have, let's open up the discussion. I'm just reading through the chat as well. Anthony said, we had interesting pushback towards one of our board members share informational pamphlets about our organization at another conference. The organizers wanted us to follow the official method of advertising our conference and organization, something we are learning how to navigate. That is the branding challenge there. If any of you have worked in a corporate environment, you would understand how protected the brand is, and actually just how valuable a brand can be, and brand equity. coming from a strategic branding background, that is one of the most polarizing topics within the brand community. Is like, well, how do we do this? Because we've all been told, like, here's the brand Bible, here's the brand guideline, do not step outside of it. This is how we talk about the brand. These are the colors we use. This is how you do the logo. You don't do anything outside of that. And it makes sense. We all understand that, don't we? We understand that, well, if we want people to know that we're professional or that we provide quality pet foods, then we need the packaging, we need the advertising to continually reinforce that message. So then once someone comes in from the left doing something completely different, and if someone comes in from this angle, does something completely different, you're causing dissonance, right? You're fragmenting that message. And now someone who may not be like Nike, we all know what Nike is. They can do a pink flowery Nike swoosh. None of us will care. Like, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's Nike. We know what it is. But if you're a new company, you're like, well, hold up. We don't want to confuse people. So I get it. But then how do we now introduce this co-creation aspect? It's a challenging question. So I completely understand where you're coming from, Anthony. Mary, did you have something to share?
Oh yeah, can I verbalize instead of writing?
Yeah, of course.
So the big challenge, I love everything you're saying, Kym, and I especially love your analogy of your team of buddies who are daily supporting each other in what you're doing. I miss that. I wish I had that. But what I'm trying to do right now with Thrive Towns is create a community of design thinkers about the physical space to create together that empowers just what you described as the individual, I call it thriving, is what causes and helps the collective thrive. So I'm trying to figure out, it's really hard for me to build community around that because it's so big, it's so broad, it's so inclusive of everyone in the community. Do you have any examples or guidance on how to do community-wide design thinking? And is Mighty Network the best platform for that, or have you found something else?
I think I won't talk specifics, like platform or anything like that. And I think this what I'll share will be applicable for any business, organization, group. It's a patience thing, right? And oftentimes as if we're a startup or an entrepreneur or someone with the idea, we see the end, and we've probably been mulling over that end vision for years. So it's very clear for us. It's deep down in our soul. When we're talking about being human-centric, we're talking about things like trust and respect. And those things aren't necessarily given freely. And sometimes a lot of those things take time to build. And if we want this environment where people feel free to be vulnerable, feel free to be honest, feel free to contribute, we need to take the time to build that trust. Just like any relationship, right? Like, you meet someone for the first time, you'll be nice to them, but whether or not you'd leave them with your kids is a whole nother question, right? And that takes time to be like, yes, that's that person. I would let them look after my kids. And in the same way, we want to build trust amongst the members. Mainly that you want to trust us. You want to trust me if it's solely you. But then as the community grows, they begin to trust the community, because like I said before, it's walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Anyone can have a really great mission statement, values, a really cool presentation, but at the end of the day, and for clients and also for companies that I've worked for client side, I'll be sitting there with the CEOs like, we want to put employees first. We want to have a culture where we listen and we're empathetic. But when it comes down to it, when it really matters, it's no, do this by 5 o'clock this afternoon because we need to make money, and the empathy goes straight out the window. So that does nothing for culture. So a lot of what we're talking about now is very tightly intertwined with culture, and culture takes time. It's not something you can buy. It's not something you can force. It will happen. And so I would encourage not just for your situation, but any situation, then if you focus on the culture, again, if you focus on the individual, the collective's needs will start to form. I would say though, you need to focus on the right individuals, and this is why having those clear expectations matters, because there's nothing worse when you invest time into a relationship only to realize that you're not on the same page. They weren't after the same things that you were after. So making that very clear, especially when you're inviting new community members, what is it that we're here for? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And then once you know you're on the same page, where are they at? You might be here ready to go one way, Mary, but they come in here with maybe they want to go this way. That's fine. Because once you start supporting them in their journey, as long as it's somewhat aligned to what you're doing, that's building trust. But you know what, Mary had my back. I love this. You know, yeah, Mary, I'll be there. I'll be there at that design thinking workshop. I'll contribute. That's culture. That's the trust building that I believe is really important.
And I think what you just said is really important, is that there should always be some face-to-face times where you're building that trust together, and then you can still be online and digitally connected and building upon that.
Yeah.
But would you say that's important to have those workshop-like environments?
Oh yeah, and look, we're all so different as humans. So what we say here amongst us, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of us, you know, we can't speak for every human being out there. So maybe some people are fine and feel comfortable building trust via chat and email. Maybe some people are happy with a video call. Maybe others really need to be there face to face, you know, and that's the problem with trying to come up with like a singular answer, is because there is no singular profile of human being. It's adaptive. And that's why empathy becomes such a strong word here, because it means you have to put in the effort to go, new person through the door, I'm going to approach you and be open-minded about the best way to build a relationship with you and how we can work together moving forward.
Thanks.
James, this folk tale about the villagers and the perfume lake. You got to tell us that one.
In hindsight, I realize it's probably not. So the story is there's this village and they've got a lake that's polluted, the horrible odors. So they have a town meeting and they decide we're going to everybody bring perfume from your home, and everybody contribute perfume from your home into the lake to correct the odor, right? Is the idea they'll perfume the lake. So on the day that's appointed, you know, all the villagers show up with their little bottles of vials, and everybody's pouring into the lake. And this one guy goes up and he takes the vial from one of the villagers and he smells it. And it's just water. There's nothing in it. And then he goes and looks at another guy's vial and he's like, this is just water, like this. And he realizes that most people are not bringing perfume. They're just bringing little bottles of water to drop in. And he asks, he says, why? He says, well, the guy says, well, it's not going to make a difference. So why am I going to waste the perfume? But then they realized that if they'd all brought perfume, it would have changed the content of the lake. It's a silly story. It doesn't exactly connect. But when you were talking about the impacts of people on the community and how the community draws, it's the story that popped into my mind, but it's not exactly appropriate because the people weren't being influenced by the lake. And the story is more about the power of collective action.
Yeah.
If everybody did their small part, it would actually have an impact. But if
Yeah.
you believe that your part is not going to do anything, then nobody does their part.
Yeah.
And they all sit it out, and then nothing does actually happen. So
yeah, it's also similar, like when you're saying like, well, I don't need to do it because James will do it, and then James, you're like, I won't do it because Kym will do it, and then none of us do it. You wrote here as well, another potential con or more an obstacle is how do you transmit the original values to second generation while also allowing the community to evolve as the next generation takes the reins, right? You could talk about that like with family, right? As you know, how the grandfather did things and then how the father did things and how he wants his son to do things. You know, say if there's a family business or so, it's here's the things that work. but look at how you can improve. Like keep the things that are working and improve on the things that aren't working or that can be improved. I think in the same way with your community, we all have a limited capacity of who we can influence, right? So if let's say if you're a business leader, take care of your 5 immediate, people that you're taking care of, managers. You take care of those 5 and really, really well, and you really help them to adopt the values and the culture. They should go on to affect their 5, and that becomes exponential, right? And so the first one is the transfer of values and culture. So they keep the first half and we'll just leave the evolution for now. That needs to just be responsible for your direct reports or the people that you have influence of. So let's say from a DAO perspective, if you're in a working group, you're not a manager or anything, but you're responsible. You're part of that team of, say, 10 people working towards Ed3 DAO magazine, let's say. Impact those people. Like if you're passionate about Ed3 DAO, go there and represent Ed3 DAO. Like that's not how we talk. Like, it's okay, let's do this. So let's submit things on time because punctuality is important to us here at Ed3 DAO, right? Or honesty is important to us. Whatever those values might be, represent that and show up and turn up for those values, I think is important. Because then those people will go on to act the same way, because that's just what we do at Ed3 DAO. That's how culture works. And someone says, "Oh, why do you guys do that?" Well, it's just what we do, right? And so the evolution of things there is more of a mindset, I believe, is that there's nothing, and I said it before, is that we should always be reiterating, it's never set and forget. We need to monitor and evaluate. Like a system and a process or a value, for that instance, is good for the time. It's good for the moment that it was created or utilized, but times change. And it's being open-minded to that change. And that's all of us from the top down. We all need to be open-minded to change. And that's why what do they say? There's no, was it yes and? Say yes and instead of no, or something like that. Like you invite the change, you invite the conversation, instead of shutting people down. And so I do believe that's more of a mindset thing. But again, that comes back from the culture. Like you said, that as a value and as a culture, that this is how we are. This is how we do things. We have our systems, but we're open to change. Again, and I want to sort of say that these are my subjective opinions as well, guys. Like, and that's why I want to research in it. There's actually not a lot of research into this, which was surprising. So I'm enjoying the journey of looking into it more. Where I could, I provided some references for you, but some of this is just my subjective opinion as well, both from the research perspective, but also from my branding experience from what I've seen. Anthony, you wrote, "I was foolish to think others have a soft spot for non-profit organizations. Got to follow the proper procedures and navigate carefully." Yeah, yep, indeed, mate. And look, I haven't seen a DAO just fully successfully operate yet. I think there's been successful DAOs, but then they've met some big challenges in how that DAO operates. It's a brilliant concept, but I think it's very, very early stages, and how a decentralized community can effectively work together. I think that challenge still needs to be solved, in my opinion. Like even us at Ed3, we have a corporate side, which is the non-profit organization. Like we have reporting that we need to do. So we are centralized in that sense, but then we have the community where we want some freedom there. The challenge there is, how do we bring those two things together? Right, you got the fresh water and the salt water, and you can see the difference there. And when do you behave one way and when do you behave the other? Right. And then I'm sure like James and Amine can speak to that as well. As course developers, we were very particular about how we needed the course developed. But if we were doing something as a working group in the DAO, it would be a little bit different. There'd be a lot more flexibility and open-mindedness. So it is a challenge. Mary said, "Advice on forming a community-wide collaborative self-organizing design thinking with youth to create a Thrive-Town facility and programs with employees." Is this a question you asked before, Mary?
Yeah,
or is this a new?
it is what I asked before, and I just wanted to to follow up with what you just said, though, about we haven't really perfected this idea of a collaborative experience with Ed3 DAO. One of the other problems we're facing about that is we want kids to be creating and earning assets, from the creations that they make at Thrive Towns. So we're running into this problem of IP, I guess you could say, right? How do you how are you doing that at Ed3 DAO to distinguish the contributions from the individuals and the revenue that might be generated from that?
Well, right now we're not doing it because we don't have anything that falls into that category. Like, we don't have any initiatives that are, hey, we've got this revenue generating thing over here that was created by a group of members, and how do we organize that? Plenty of discussions over the years, because it's come up, and it's a can of worms, because when you open that up, you start talking about membership, right? Are people paying for membership to be a member? And then what benefits do they get from that membership? Are they fair benefits, right? It could be case by case. Maybe it's not the same for every single initiative or thing that's created. Maybe in your case, because it seems like more of a program, you might be able to sort of lock it up in a nice tight box and say, this is how we do things when it comes to this. In a typical DAO example, you could have someone making a magazine, another group made a podcast, this group over here created the new logo for the DAO. The other thing to consider as well from a DAO perspective is that for all the things that get approved and voted in, you've got, 90% of them that were rejected, that people put time into, that didn't amount to anything. So there's people investing time into because it all starts as a proposal. I propose that we have an Ed3 DAO magazine, for example, and I put together a content plan, and I put together a draft design. It might take me a week, and then if you're like, no, I don't like it, or it needs to be changed, so I'm just feeling a little bit disheartened. It's people have different capacity for those sorts of things, right? And I'd imagine that an 18-year-old who's excited about crypto, Web3, and DAOs might have more tolerance for that sort of thing, but maybe a mother of 3, she might have less time to spare for that. Where does she invest her time? She has to be wise about it. So it's a case-by-case thing. But it's very complex and fascinating nonetheless, but complex. I feel like I'm not really answering. I'm just sort of dancing around the questions. But
can I ask if you know of any communities that are moving successfully in the direction of like a cryptocurrency where you can exchange values? You can exchange a community coin if you got something like a newsletter and you really liked it, and you exchange coin. I'm looking at that decentralized financial exchange model.
There are plenty of examples of like the decentralized side works really great. It works really great. Even the governance side, there's some really great applications that work well. There were some big DAOs that were very, very successful. The problem that I've found, and I'm broad strokes with the same brush, but a lot of the DAOs that were created back in the NFT hype were tied to monetary gain benefit, right? Once that starts to die down and the NFTs that you held or the things that you were buying were no longer bringing in the revenue, well, you can't spend, your days just sitting down trading NFTs now. You probably need to get a job or something else. Now you've got the rare few who are maybe already wealthy or have a great business, or maybe they've got a really good crypto portfolio. But for the majority of people, it just wasn't feasible to stay in there as long, to contribute that much time. And that's where the problem, it's only as good as people, as long as people are getting benefit from it. That doesn't have to be monetary benefit. That could be access to quality resources, anything like that. And, if it's purely just a digital token, whether that's an NFT or an actual, currency of some sort, it's really just a token that we could use to identify a membership. And that's where the NFT comes, is that you are a member of this, So just like your gym card, you swipe it at the door and you get all the benefits. That's very easy to do, to exchange that. The complexities of decentralized governance is the challenge. Governance is probably the more is the more specific topic where this becomes difficult. The technology works great, and being out and the world's your oyster in terms of what you can do with that technology. The ethical side of things and how we maintain our values, how we take care of people, how we take care of the brand, all of these different parameters is the challenge. So there are lots of examples, if you were to look, of how people have utilized blockchain technology to do some really great things. The challenge is like even some of the really, really good ones, DAOs have either folded or the membership have dropped because it's just not feasible anymore. Like the things that were important to them a couple of years ago just aren't important to them anymore. So once the membership dies off, it's no longer a thing. So what do you do? What do you do? And so yeah, it's a tricky one to answer. Yes, lots of blockchain examples that are doing good governance wise. I think because we met at the summit, Mary, if you look back at some of those recordings, I think there's a Yoast and Thomason, I think, and another guy. They were talking about holacracy, right, which is decentralized governance. Very smart guys who have years of experience in that particular area, but also other governance models as well. So just how they talk about that and the challenges. So they work with companies to help implement these sorts of things. And even when we've spoken with Yoast, he would say that holacracy isn't an out-of-the-box solution. Here you go, set up holacracy and you're done. It's teaching the principles of it and you take what works for you. So decentralized governance is in play in a lot of businesses already, in organizations and communities, but maybe only in certain areas, in certain ways. You keep some centralized things because they work really well. You take other things to help establish a culture of co-creation. But yeah, definitely. If you can see that session, it was very interesting.
And are there still recordings, saved from the summit?
Yeah, there are. There's a playlist on our YouTube channel, I believe.
Okay, great. And when's the next summit planned for?
No plans. No plans at this point. We're having a look at everything, seeing whether it's worth doing another summit. We've got a lot of growth plans happening at the moment, so we're going to see how that pans out over the next few months, and then we'll see what 2025 looks like.
Does anyone else have questions? I don't want to dominate.
Yeah, feel free to ask. I appreciate all of your time. And I will be respectful. We're about to hit the 1 hour mark as well. So happy to stay on if you guys have questions. But I don't want to keep you longer than I should. Well, look. Oh, sorry, Mary.
No, who was just somebody was about to speak or no?
I think that was me.
It was you. If I could just ask sort of a wrap-up question of you, Kym, is as you're telling the story about the challenges that the DAO and the construct of a fully decentralized model, would you say there's going to emerge, or are you seeing signs of emergence of platforms that can use more AI to facilitate the complexities that you're speaking about? I don't know. And, are you seeing a good direction going to help facilitate good digital community?
There's really interesting, fascinating, experiments going on. Like one of the challenges with the DAO, right? Not just Ed3 DAO, just DAOs in general, is how do you reward contributions, right? Now, if someone is in Mighty Networks constantly commenting and welcoming new people. They're not an employee or nothing. They're just a proud member. That they're always in there. How do you reward that person? Short of someone going through and going, okay, let's see how many posts Mary's done this year, like manually. You know, how do you take note of that? And it's difficult. You can't just say, you can't just put a numeric value on there. So every time Mary does a post, add one to her cell in the spreadsheet. Because what if someone's just there going, lol, 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 all day, every day? They hack the system. So it's not really a genuine, you know, assessment of value in the community. AI can be good because it can start to assess and critique whether that's actually a quality contribution. But then there's limitations to that as well, to a certain degree. But there are some really interesting use cases. When I originally did this presentation, it was for a business workshop. So I tweaked it to be more suitable for educators. But in the business one, I started off by saying, like, we need to be careful not to conflate DAOs with decentralized governance. Like, DAOs are an expression, or blockchain as well. Like, that's technology. And same with AI, these are tools. So we need to think about decentralized governance as its own model, as its own sort of systematic approach. Then, like any good system should start from a manual process, and then you bring in the technologies to improve that process, right? So you should know how long, if you're selling waffles, how long it takes for a waffle to cook on the stovetop there, or the waffle line. Like, you've done it, you've been there. So, okay, cool. How do I make that process more efficient? Okay, what if we add a robot that does the lifting and the closing of the lid? Like, you jot down every single little process that you do to get from A to B. And it's the same thing when you're talking about people. How do we do things? Well, right now we just share Google Docs back and forth. Is there a way that we can do that more efficiently? Okay, right now I manually write all my notes in a notepad on my computer. What if we use Trello? You know, like, you start to implement, and it doesn't have to be. We shouldn't be using blockchain for blockchain's sake. We should use it because it's relevant and it's got to improve the experience both for us and our community members. Same goes with AI. Don't just use it because it's the new thing. Use it because it's going to make our lives better. It's going to help us do the things that we actually want to do, which is design thinking workshops. It's going to help us do more of that. Right? So just separating those things, focus on how do we want to provide freedom and opportunity to co-create, then how do we introduce technologies to make that a little bit easier? These are awesome questions. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, and one other thing Vitri and I had talked about in the past was expanding the scope of Ed3 DAO beyond the teaching, beyond the educator network, but into parents and community engagement. So can you just give us an indication of where is the growth that you guys are looking at, you know, the projects that you're looking at for the future of Ed3 DAO?
We are passionately devoted to our mission, right? The 1 million, onboarding 1 million educators. And that's our North Star. When we have meetings, we go, does this align with that? And that's also business opportunities. I think there have been some really good business opportunities come across our table, and we're like, that's going to take us away from those who we said we're committed to helping. And so the thing is, Ed3 DAO is open to parents, community, like other people. I'm not an educator. I came in through a different way. All right. So, well, I'm not a traditional educator. I mean,
I'm not buying that. Sorry.
Like, I didn't teach at school or anything like that. I love mentoring and teaching and that, but I'm not your traditional educator. So I didn't come in through the normal way. I came in sort of through a side door, but I found the community very relevant to me, and I loved the mission. So I think there could be ways of us, you know, letting other people know that, hey, as a parent, if you care about and you want to have a say in the sort of education, you know, the future of education, you're welcome to join, you know. But we're like I said, we're passionate about the mission. And we always want to make sure that what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is taking a step towards that 1 million, the 1 million educators. Because we see it as that if an educator is going to impact 1,000 students in their lifetime, that's 1 billion students that we get to impact, have a positive impact on, right? If we can hit our goal of 1 million educators. So, yeah, and that's why we look at the courses. Like the courses are popular. People are getting a lot of value out of them. We see the feedback from that, and you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So we'll keep doing those things, and then we'll look at where's our time best spent. But absolutely, Mary, if you've got people, if you know people who want to join who aren't educators, but they're passionate about what we're passionate about as a community, they're more than welcome to join.
Great.